She fled. So good afternoon. Welcome to March 2nd Climate Solution Caucus meeting. We have a smaller group today, but great to see everybody. There are a lot of meetings going on. We have a relatively short agenda, pretty much 3 items. One is we're going to hear briefly from Ms. Andrea Wright from VTrans, who's going to talk about an initiative that they're spearheading and plant a seed in your heads for a longer discussion, two-way discussion that she hopes you will attend. Second, we will talk through the draft Vermont Climate Solutions Caucus 2023 policy priorities that was emailed out to the full caucus. And thank you everybody who filled out the survey in terms of what you support. For viewers. Basically, people were asked, please click if you support, if you'd like to support, but have questions/concerns. And then third, if you are really concerned with a potential priority, and then just an other category. So we will talk through what some of the feedback was that we received on the survey and have just sort of an open discussion about this document. And then third is other, in case other people want to say something. And as usual, we will aim to get out by like 12:45 because folks need to get over to other meetings. So with that, Ms. Wright, please come on up here and share who you are and what you're doing. It's very exciting. Maybe sit here and I'll go get some food.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Wright, and I'm the environmental. I don't know how to do this yet. Like Zoom is easier to not have to do this, but I'm the environmental policy manager at VTrans, and I'm here to just take 5 minutes of your time. I really appreciate you squeezing me in here. I want to give you a little background about what the carbon reduction program is, and then figure out how to best engage this group for a more detailed conversation about this. We've been struggling to figure out how to get an hour to an hour and a half of your time. So by the end, if I can walk out of here understanding how to do that, that would be great. Yeah. So just a little quick background. The carbon reduction program is part of the IIJA from November 2021. Vermont stands to receive $32 million over the 5 years, so $6.3 million annually. And the program is just what you think it would be. It's to go towards transportation projects that can reduce transportation emissions. And so far, we are, we want to meet the Global Warming Solutions Act reduction requirements. And then the other requirement or objective for us is to develop a strategy within the guidelines of the carbon reduction program from the federal highway. We're using a 2-phase approach. So our first phase is to develop a methodology to quantify what we can get for greenhouse gas reductions from our programs and projects within VTrans. And the second part of that is to actually develop the carbon reduction strategy. So far, we have gathered a technical committee. We started this in September. So we have a technical committee and we have an advisory committee. The advisory committee has met just once so far. The technical committee was instrumental in understanding what tools are available and figuring out what tools would go into our really customized methodology for Vermont. So we have developed the methodology. We have put it towards our capital program for 23 and 24, just to kind of test it out in the 23 and put it towards the 24. And no surprise to us, we're finding that what we have in place is really not reducing carbon emissions a lot. So in our scope of work, we knew this going into it. So we included an evaluation of policies also, not just from our programs, what we would get, but what other policies could be implemented statewide. And so that's where we are right now, that we're sort of entering into phase 2. Phase 1 was the methodology, phase 2 is the strategy. So we are scheduling, we start next week with stakeholder groups. We are reaching out to environmental justice communities, the RPCs, business, transit, who else? You all. There's 6 stakeholder groups, and then we will also have 2 public meetings So this first round, you'll have 2 opportunities to participate in the stakeholder groups and the public meeting, and then we'll go back, we'll do a bunch of work based on what we heard and come back out to those stakeholder groups again and have another public meeting. That would probably, the second round, probably somewhere late June. We should start scheduling those now because it's been really difficult to schedule all these different stakeholder groups. So let me see what else I want to, yeah, so the strategy development, I guess one important thing to let you know is, like I said, the strategy calls, the scope of work called for evaluation of strategies that are exclusively for transportation programs. So one scenario has to include just transportation, agency of transportation projects and programs. The other one is exclusively looking at policy, so ignoring what we can do with the transportation agency stuff. And then we asked for at least 2 more, or up to 2 more that would combine all of that, sort of throw everything in to different levels. And so that's where the stakeholder engagement comes in. We want to hear from all these different groups what concerns are about the potential different strategies, what strategies we should really dive into deep, and which ones people don't want to go deep on. And with that, looking at co-benefits, health benefits, economic benefits, how we can potentially make a longer term revenue source out of any of the strategies that we're looking at. So that is where we are. You all, the Climate Caucus is our elected officials stakeholder group. And like I said, I would love to figure out how best to engage the group. With everybody else, we've scheduled 90-minute meetings where we'll do a presentation and solicit that input that way. But we want to hear from you guys, and we want to hopefully have you carve out some time where we can come and have that engaged and deep conversation. So is it here? I mean, it feels like this.
It's not here.
Yeah, it feels short and fast. And
is this a 90-minute meeting? No, that would be great.
We could do it an hour. We just need an hour. We can commit to like 60 minutes. We can do it at night. We can do it at lunch. We can do it whenever is best for you. We will record it. We can follow up. We can take input that way. Just want to kind of hear from you all what you think is the best approach to really hearing from you.
And so what I recommended when Andrea and I had spoken on the phone last week was if they were to, I think I said only 1, but maybe if you held 2 1-hour Zoom webinars. I know they're as pleasant as wonderfulness, but that way, maybe there could be one on a Monday night from 6 to 7 p.m. And then one at a Friday noon from 12 to 1 or something like that. So that if someone needs to do it, during a weeknight or like a non-working time, they could do that, or they could have another option and to pick from there, and then also to record it so that someone could watch it and then provide follow-up either by directly communicating to Andrea or sending an email. Does that seem of interest to folks?
Yeah, do folks want to participate in this?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So, but just clarification, this process is to help V-Trans work out how to be more carbon smart.
Yes. So there's 2 parts, right? Because it's our programs that we have the control over the levers to pull. And then there's the statewide policies, which we can have a part in, but don't necessarily lead that. So we have our advisory group, and our technical committee has, all different representation, but we have the Climate Action Office involved and other groups that might take the lead on a policy kind of thing. So yes, we want to hear what the state of Vermont should be doing. And we will present to you what we feel are the limits of what we can do as an agency with our programs. It really is pretty limited. Estimates have been like maybe anywhere from 2 to 8% reductions of the overall needs, and that's just not going to cut it.
So that Senator White and I had kept asking V-Trans when we both served on House Transportation last biennium was, great that we're putting all these millions of dollars into all of these incentives like Replace Your Ride or Mileage Smart, which is a program for lower and moderate income Vermonters so that they can get into better mileage vehicles. They don't spend as much money getting to work, et cetera. Great that we're doing that, but how do we know what the bang for the buck is? And so I personally am really glad to see that you guys are trying to dig into this a little bit. Again, it's a push-pull because the government, VTrans, can only do so much. I mean, you can do a lot, but there is only so much that you can do with carrots, sticks, and then within VTrans equipment and policies itself. And I think that's the part that you're talking about. How do you develop that pull to the larger market so that we're also seeing broader transportation emissions reductions
Exactly.
beyond VTrans?
Yep.
So are people generally okay with a 6 to 7 p.m. on a Monday night and then a like Friday noon to 1, or would you prefer a 6 to 7 p.m. Monday night and then a different weeknight?
How you feeling? I'm seeing thumbs up over here, okay? Seeing nods generally?
Friday seems problematic. Just energy levels are low and, it's been a long week.
Yes.
Monday's great.
Okay, we'll do Monday evening and then for the.
Would
round
Monday
thing.
noon, or is that just go with the nighttime? And
Most
call
of
it
us
good?
work on Mondays.
I know. That's what you said. Like, we have other jobs.
We do. A lot of us. Not all of us.
So evenings would be,
It's a Monday evening.
yeah,
We
Monday.
could do,
I'm
yeah,
in town by then.
okay. And we'd love to hear from every single one of you, but
Are you-
is there a representative group that, I mean, can we get the majority of you at that one time? That would be great. And then again, follow up. We have a webpage where you can submit stuff. You can always call and have one-on-one conversations if that, is an option too.
When do you need to have this done by? Is there an opportunity to wait until we're maybe in a little bit more of a lull as a legislative, like the pace isn't as?
Yeah, when, we were hoping to get all of this first round done in March.
Okay.
Because we want to start working on.
We can try to
on the
do that.
Evaluation.
We're gone next week, so.
Right.
So we will work on which Monday night works. It sounds like we will only offer one, Monday, 6 to 7. And our incredible Representative Rice will send out updates, links, et cetera, that you can share with us.
Okay, yeah, so can we nail down a week that would be best? you think?
Let's do this offline.
Okay.
Just because we have such limited.
Yep,
But
perfect.
I will
Probably
chat with you as soon as we're done with this meeting.
Okay. Probably the
Thank
third
you.
week.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up, we got policy priorities.
So for anyone watching, it's a 2-page document. It says 2023 policy priorities. I'll just clarify that the second page is a bit of a blur into the 2023-2024 biennium. Clearly, we're coming up on crossover, and there are a lot of bills or bill ideas on the back that we're definitely not getting through in the next 2 weeks. So the front page is really focusing on 3 areas that we are expecting to see move in some way or another through the bodies this session. And in the back, we have a slew of ideas that many of them actually have bills proposed for them, but not all of them did. So to be consistent, we just left them off. But if you are interested in which bills align with these, there are many. I'll just say, having skimmed the survey results, some of the pieces that I heard back was a real desire to connect with our more rural communities, and that there can be a feeling in a sense that some of the efforts we're taking, like if it's electric vehicles or if it's I think the Affordable Heat Act has raised a lot of concerns, which you're going to be addressing if folks want to listen to your public radio interview. We've heard that some rural communities are feeling like there needs to be more focus and more outreach to really make it clear how these climate initiatives are going to help those smaller communities that are really struggling. So that was one item that did come up through the survey. Another item that came up was an interest in the network geothermal. And particularly as we are likely to see a large investment in housing, if we're going to be supporting like 30 single unit compact, like Act 250 type projects, does it make sense to figure out how we can actually do a network geothermal heating system for that type of development? And what are the obstacles to that? At this point, the Public Utility Commission does not have regulatory authority to oversee that type of project. So that is one of the other bills that popped up in the survey responses. Generally, there was a lot of support. Generally, there was also support questions, which is not surprising since you're reading one sentence and you're a bunch of legislators, so you're interested in the details. But
Yeah, I think
Gabriella, can I put a pitch
Oh,
in
Mari.
for that? Hi, everybody. Voice from the ether.
okay.
go ahead,
Do you
you,
mind if I put a pitch in for just a quick one for that?
yeah,
Okay. So we still haven't given up hope that we can move to completion the geothermal part of legislation this session. And I understand where we're at right now, but we may be able to use another vehicle. The benefits are, I know it's dangerous to say that it's relatively straightforward as a bill, but it is. We've done a huge amount of background work beforehand with stakeholders, including Matt Coda and Vermont Fuels with Vermont Gas. Vermont Gas would like to, is gearing up to establish network geothermal. It's a great community project that we need initially utilities to be able to develop because there's because of the investment, although energy cooperatives around district geothermal could eventually spring up in communities like my own and in Bristol. It has support of or input from Vermont Gas, as I said, Matt Coda, and support from a bunch of other organizations. And it is clean. New York State passed unanimously their network geothermal bill in 2021, and there are already many projects, district geothermal projects across the state. Could be elder housing, could be a business block in a downtown area. Could be, as Gabrielle pointed out, associated with new or rehabbed housing. But I think it would be really, really helpful if we could move on district geothermal sooner. It's local. We're not sourcing any fossil fuels. So I'm just putting a big plug in for trying to get this moved this session if possible. Thanks.
So thank you, Rep. Cordis. So are you making a case that you think that the bill that you've got, which I don't have the number in front of me now, that we reference on the back, are you making a case that we have it be one of the top priorities?
I am. Thank you for restating that so clearly.
How does the group feel about that? So the three bills that we have outlined as our top priorities are the Affordable Heat Act, the Transforming Transportation Bill, and the Climate Resilience through Conservation Goals and Planning. What are we feeling about adding an additional bill as the one Rep. Cordis noted?
and I should flag, there was another request. This is, the squeaky wheel. No offense, Representative Cordis. I think all of us are squeaky wheels though, right?
I'm happy being squeaky.
There was another request. So there was another bill that basically would identify a funding mechanism to help smaller towns to address and pay for like infrastructure damage as a result of increased storm events. And so there was a request to support that concept as well, whether or not it's that specific bill or if it's that concept of how do we help those smaller towns? A lot of our rural communities are getting pummeled with increased storm events and are not necessarily able to have either the technical capacity because they may not just even have the staff or financial resources to address some of the storm events. So that's another bill that was mentioned specifically in the survey.
So I guess that it's kind of two different questions we need to answer today, which is one, do we want to add any additional bills? And then two, do we want to add either of those two bills? So the floor is open. Yes. Representative Robin Hangerman of Middlesex.
Middletown Springs.
Middletown Springs.
Just to make it a little longer. Thank you. I would be in favor of adding the network geothermal specifically because it's famous last word, small and simple. Granting authority to the PUC as opposed to the more complex and multifaceted bills. It seems like it's an achievable goal.
Cool.
Short period of time.
Yeah, I'm not seeing this being no one's vehemently shaking heads or reacting. So I have a suggestion. I'll take no in a minute. Okay. I have one suggestion on how we can move forward with this, which is perhaps, depending on what Noah says, we could have Representative Caucus and others draft maybe a paragraph that they might want to include that would outline it as an additional priority, and we can send that out and look at it before we approve if that's amenable to folks. But go ahead.
I think the geothermal should be, because not only are we going to have all this housing and that and stuff, a lot of low-income housing is going to be built, and to be able to reduce their monthly costs increases their quality of life and equity. So I think it's definitely a plus.
Okay, well, that feels good. Representative Caucus, would you be willing to type up a paragraph or a few short sentences that we could include in the priorities doc that we could send out to the? Great. Okay.
Yep, I'll do that today.
You rock. Unless, again, I'm not seeing any major reactions, no. So if I'm not seeing it, please tell me.
Just process. I think since we have 94 members, maybe what we can do is, Representative Caucus, when you send that, we will share that paragraph with the members via email. And we will probably put it in the negative, which is if you do not respond, then this will go into the front page.
Oh, I like that.
That was great.
Okay, and
Thanks for considering, everybody.
Great point. With the second bill, who is the spear? Do you have the?
There were two bills pertaining to it. And one was Representative Dolan had a bill, and also Representative Sims had a bill about essentially identifying ways to provide longer term funding through insurance. And I'm not an expert, and my favorite pet bill is actually on the back, but I'm the only one who loves it, so I will be quiet.
Okay. Does anyone on that bill with either Dolan or Sims want to speak to it? Okay, not seeing anyone. Maybe we can put a pin in that and follow up with them. And are people open to us offering the same suggestion to them? I'm seeing nodding from at least Representative Boslin's giving me some cues.
Angela's nodding.
Angela's nodding. Okay, we're getting two. Thank you for the active. And Bobby's got two thumbs up. So,
and just so you know, Co-Chair Senator White and I will be meeting with the co-chairs of the Rural Caucus over next week to try and hone in on some of the concerns that we heard in the survey. Just flagging that for folks.
Representative Williams?
I do worry a slight amount about an emphasis on exclusively rural or smaller towns, myself representing Berry City. I think perhaps we could pair that emphasis with also a desire to support lower income communities regardless of size. And I would very much appreciate that rather than perhaps exacerbating this artificial dichotomy between smaller and larger communities.
Oh, well.
I love that.
Oh, we know we've got the floor is open now.
Being from Burlington, I would make sure that the language does not continue that unnecessary and unhelpful dynamic.
I saw Representative Dodge and then
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, that's something that keeps coming up in our transportation committee. And, you know, I think a lot of the Bill H-101 is being stymied a little bit in our discussions, in our committee discussions because of that sense. I'm the only one with a big population center, representing a typical Chittenden County existence, and the only BIPOC member of the committee. So I'm very sensitive to this, when we talk about poverty, it's rural and it's white. And when we all know that, the biggest marker of how you do in this country is your color. And then on top of all of those other things, right? So if we're talking about a rural person who happens to be Black or brown, they're still going to be worse off than a white person who's in a rural region. So I just don't want to lose sight of that in those discussions. And I think thank you.
well said.
Yeah, I just want to put my approval on that too. I think this is a poverty issue, and we do see a correlation though between poverty and rural living, but it's not exclusive to rural living. And then this meeting between leadership, I'm not a leader, but I'd love to be there. Because I have a lot of strong feelings about this particular subject.
Yeah, like the climate to rural conversation.
Yeah,
You're entirely welcome.
thank you.
And if anyone else is interested,
Oh, yeah.
you can let us know. This
Yeah.
is not exclusive. It's more, how do we all find a time to meet?
Yes, as long as your schedule doesn't limit you very extensively, we would love to have you. Okay, so I think we've got some direction going forward on the priorities document. We are not going to vote on this document in large part because we spent time creating it before the session and have reviewed it with that process over email. So we're going to have one more shot to look at this with these revisions possibly that you'll see, and then we'll have it done. We also brought this to the Speaker of the House already. And I would say the comment that might be relevant for this group that she highlighted was kind of a lack of food resiliency being in the document. So we definitely want to also add to that conversation, which was noted by our speaker. And we're going to also meet with the Senate Pro Tem as well to show them the priorities document.
I would just say that she was excited to see that food resiliency was on the back page and encourages food resiliency and agriculture to be a bigger part of the climate
Yeah,
conversation.
it is there. She just said it was great.
Oh, there you go. I know, the speaker's pretty cool. Okay, are we ready for other? And then we can wrap. We've got 5 minutes. Any notes or things that we want to talk about today that people are feeling like we need as a Climate Solutions Caucus to kick off a conversation about before town meeting week?
We actually have time to converse.
And what's the topic of conversation? I'm sorry.
This is other.
This is other.
Oh, cool.
This is we want to hear from you guys as you're going into town meeting week. I mean, Representative Dodge, she's got one finger up, so.
I keep harping on this in my committee, but I'm curious what people's the history and the attitude and the models for zero fare for public transit or really expanding public transit. I know it's part of H-101, but the discussions seem to only be about, and it's now really confusing VTrans and GMT because, we're talking about maintaining zero fare for rural populations, but not the urban populations. And it's all based on a study that kind of guesstimated how many riders we would have and how much revenue we would get from those paying riders. And I get that there are a lot of issues, like Medicaid match funds and, if you're not tracking your riders or there's no, but I'm just curious whether, folks have great insight into this, into public transit and really voices like who to bring in for testimony or get letters from for testimony in support of, or just to enlighten us.
I'll let Representative Pat also speak to this, but We did have previously in transportation testimony from riders, from people who were using the service, and that was very powerful. We also heard from folks who are members of the Vermont Disability is a Council, and we heard from that group at one point, or representatives from that group. That was helpful. I would recommend those folks. It does take a little bit more work than just going to like the people you see every day in the committee room, but that's important. Representative Pat.
I'd be happy to talk about this just so people know, after having driven buses and vans for a number of years, I started my professional and management career as the co-director of a nonprofit in this area, developing public transportation systems. That organization doesn't exist anymore, but some of the services that exist now were things that I actually designed. And so in terms of the issues about whether and how feasible is public transportation in very rural areas, that's something we can talk about. It's a very difficult thing to do if you're looking at it from a climate and energy perspective, as opposed to giving rides to people who wouldn't have a way to get there anyway. In some cases, you're using more energy in order to do that. So that's I guess that summarizes the tough part of the balancing.
Yeah.
And I just want to throw out there for context, for if you haven't sat on House Transportation, I think the budget last year was like 850 million. And we are talking about 1 million for people who can't afford like $1.50.
You're saying that lost revenue would be 1.88 million.
Yeah.
And that's a guessing that ridership will remain at the projected levels that they have now, having zero fare. So we're counting on this number of riders.
So I just want to put it in context, because we can spend hundreds of millions on a shared transit system, which is our roads. And we were just talking about how poverty is throughout rural and urban. And ironically, the one place that we're saying we're not going to provide zero fare is an urban area, which ironically is probably where public transit works the best in terms of actually getting from A to B. So I do have an idea for a connection for you that I can chat with you offline. I just want to, I had understood though that you guys were working towards a really creative solution, which is to provide $1 million for this year, and then to come up with a system whereby there would be some little
Like a 3-tier, like
ticket thing, so that folks who truly cannot afford it can go free. But the folks that can pay for it, and in particular, some of the larger, like UVM Medical Center, et cetera, there are negotiated agreements for the larger entities that they will provide, a discount to their employees. So part of the struggle here is if you're providing zero fare to everybody, then you lose those larger collection of fundings from those larger companies. Do you feel like that conversation isn't really going in the right direction?
I guess I'm thinking bigger picture.
Yeah.
Why can't we still ask private entities to contribute towards a countywide program without having to be like, oh, you have to show your student ID to get on. And that tells us, that tallies how many riders. Like, we know-ish how many riders ride. Can we not ask like Global Foundries and the Essex Experience and the U-Mall, and there would be so many more people to contribute that it would actually be less onerous if we just had that approach to begin with, and we simplified a service where, yes, we are aiming to help the most vulnerable people, but then it becomes a system that everybody wants to use because it's going right by your house. And why not send your kid, instead of getting a third vehicle in your family, send them to school and to downtown on the bus, knowing that they'll get there safely and soundly, and it's a simple system, and anybody who comes into town, right? Like,
so I need to
Kansas
connect you with
City,
some
Chapel Hill.
Yes.
There are models out there for urban
Rep Dodge, I don't want to cut you
Sorry,
off.
yeah, that's-
But you are,
But she's going to.
but I'm going to.
Gotta do it.
And we're gonna wrap up, and if folks want to talk to Rep Dodge further about the Fair Freeze, especially if it impacts your communities, I feel like you've raised your hand and opened that conversation up. So have a great town meeting week, friends. And thank you so much for being a part of the Climate Solutions Caucus. And thank you again to Jordan and to the advocates who are here, and for the free pizza, because that, I think, is why I come, obviously. So, so thank you, everybody.
Thanks.